who was Nadine before the title, before the leadership, before the spotlights?
Oh my goodness, flashback to student days. Who was I back then? I think that I spent a lot of my time in my early 20s pretending to be far more confident than I actually was.
At the time, whilst you were still in school, did you imagine yourself in politics and city leadership at any point?
Not for a moment, no. I always knew that there was something inside of me. There was a fire, a light, a spark, a something I needed to satisfy, and I had no clue what it was.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Gist podcast. This is a space where we share rich stories of growth, resilience, and leadership to inspire and support your personal, professional, and entrepreneurial ambitions as students. And today I'm joined by Councillor Nadine Peatfield, the leader of Derby City Council and Deputy Mayor of the East Midlands Combined Council Authority. Nadine's journey is a powerful blend of creativity, community, and public service. She studied drama and English, has led a community choir since 2008, ran a Derby-based family magazine and events business, and previously served as a director at Derby Museum. A path to leadership wasn't linear, and that's exactly what makes the story matters to us today. And we'll be talking about our personal journey, the lessons learned along the way, the challenges behind leadership, and what students and young people in Derby can take from our experience. Nadine, welcome to Derby Gist podcast.
Thank you, Sam. Lovely to see you again.
It's great to have you here again, and I think I must just first of all say thank you for honoring this again. Just as a sort of introduction, Nadine and I have had this conversation earlier before now, but then I was able to only retrieve about 10 minutes of the conversation, and it was so heartbreaking. And I reached out to Nadine again, and she's been so gracious to honor this invite again. So thank you very much for that, Nadine.
We might be getting a sense of deja vu when we're talking.
Thank you. Yeah. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of repetitions, but again, thank you very much for doing this. I appreciate it. I suppose the first point to really start the conversation would be, who was Nadine before the title, before the leadership, before the spotlights? How did it start for you, especially when you flash back to whilst you were still a student? Who was Nadine?
Oh my goodness, flashback to student days. Who was I back then? I think that I spent a lot of my time in my early 20s pretending to be far more confident than I actually was. I loved drama, I loved music, I loved singing, I loved acting, and all of those things are very, very outgoing, and and you kind of expect a big personality, and that's probably very much the person that I portrayed myself to be, but I was very much masking a nervousness underneath, and a fear, I think, of people finding out what the real me was, because I didn't think I was as interesting as I was showing people that I was. So as a student, I think I threw myself into lots of things. It was that fake it till you make it kind of thing. I just, feigning confidence and hoping that eventually one day it would catch up with me, and that I might feel it on the inside in the way that I portrayed it to everybody else. But I guess, that's where the acting and the drama skills come in, and I spent those 20s just waiting for the two to blend.
And just picking up on what you said about faking till you make it, and recently I had a post on my LinkedIn account, and one of the things I was saying is how that personally on my role I have to fake it sometimes. I have to pretend to be confident. I have to max it because I don't want the average student to think I'm not doing my job or I'm not capable, So on the post, one of the things I made mention, and again, it's back to some of my readings, how that nothing is actually innately ours. We got those traits one way or the other whilst we live, whilst we see people do things. So I was making the arguments, are we actually born confident? Are we actually born bold, or do we pick these traits up as we progress in life? So doesn't it imply that at some point we fake these things, we pretend to be who we supposedly are not at those moments because we want to be those things at the end of the day?
Yeah, I think that's true, because you can only grow into yourself, can't you, really? And when you're young, like you are, you're still finding out who you are. You're still pushing your own boundaries and exploring different avenues to test what fits with you and what doesn't. And I don't think that anything that I'm saying would be unrecognisable to most people, especially students and young people in their 20s. But I say it because I think it's important that people realise that, oh, it's not just me. Even when you look at someone like me in a role that I play right now, leading a city, you'd assume that I'd always been that way, that I'd always been full of confidence. But I think it's really important to share with people that no, I'm not saying that I was ever pretending to be someone I wasn't, but I was definitely pretending to be more confident than I ever was. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that when you push yourself out of your comfort zone, that's where the learning comes in, and that's where you find out, actually, I'm not comfortable with this, but it's good for me.
Yeah.
So it's a good discomfort. Whereas sometimes you'll push yourself into an area, or you find yourself in a situation you think, oh, no, this doesn't sit well with me, and I'm not happy, I'm not comfortable with this right now. So you're constantly pushing and testing your own boundaries, aren't they?
Yeah. Again, I think it's more about pretending to be who you want to be. And a similar instance for me would be when I was still really very intentional about trying to pick up my confidence skills. I would set goals for myself, like meet 5 random people today, and then I'll just walk up to 5 random students at the coffee or blends or anywhere. I just say hi. I just wanted to say hi. At first, it can be. I mean, there are times I get the look of, why are you saying hi to me? And then there are times I really get a very good one, like warm one, and a very receptive one. But then, for all of those meetings, I think what stood out for me was I know what I wanted to get out of those conversations. I knew I was driving at something, and it just kept me going. I suppose another question I'm really intrigued to ask you is how you transited from being a student of drama and English to politics. At the time, whilst you were still in school, did you imagine yourself in politics and city leadership at any point?
Not for a moment, no. I really, really didn't see myself in politics at all. It was not my ambition. It was never on my radar. I remember doing a media module at university and studying the front pages and seeing Tony Blair back then. It was the Prime Minister on the front pages, and it all just going over my head completely. It wasn't in my world, really. So you said earlier, you said in the introduction that it wasn't a linear path. No, it really wasn't. When I graduated from Worcester, University of Worcester in 1997.
That's a long time ago.
Thanks. Thanks for reminding me. Yes, it was. I thought I wanted to get into acting. I thought I wanted to be an actor and a singer. But I had no idea how to get there because, I hadn't gone to a traditional drama school or anything like that. Yes, I had a drama and English degree, but I'd still had no leg up or no way into that. And I, like everybody else, had to pay the bills when I graduated. So I took a job in a call centre. And, that was the first job that I interviewed that I got. It was minimum wage at the time. It was in a soulless box with no natural light, no windows. It was all, the bright lighting above you. And it was just a horrible, horrible job. And I was utterly miserable. And to add into all of that experience of it being a soulless box, it was a call centre and I was dealing with complaints. So I was 6 or more hours a day just listening to people shouting down the phone at me. It was just horrendous. But, my goodness, did I learn some resilience there and learn how to not only to how to listen and understand other people's point of views and try and see things from their perspective. Why were they angry? But it taught me about, how you treat other people as well. A lot of people shouting down the phone at me, imagining me to be a soulless person myself. But, and forgetting that the person on the end of the phone is a human being. And I've never, ever forgotten that lesson. But then the other thing about that resilience is to remember that it's not personal. So, from every job, even the worst jobs, there's always positive things that you can take from it. But from there, I always knew that there was something inside of me. There was a fire, a light, a spark, a something I needed to satisfy, and I had no clue what it was. Absolutely no idea. But I just knew that I needed a leg up. I needed someone to recognise something in me, or just an opportunity. Something to open up for me so that I could show what I was capable of. And yet again, I had no idea what that was, but I just knew that was what I needed, and that was something inside of me that I needed to satisfy. So I took what I could from that job and moved on as quickly as possible, and moved on to a couple of different jobs. But eventually I got to a place where I was working in a different call centre, and this one had windows, so it was a step up, definitely. But the difference was with that particular job, still in my 20s, was that they spent time with us, with everybody that was working there. It was a new place, and they were giving us training. They spent time investing in us before we picked up a phone. And what happened in that job, before I even started talking to the public, was one of those trainers recognised something in me, and she told the manager that she's good. I can see something in her. Keep an eye on her because she's really good. And I was beaming with pleasure and just pride and excitement that somebody had. That's what I'd been looking for. Someone to recognise that I was a step up. There was something more that I could do. So that was the start of it, really. And still nothing to do with politics, by the way. But, it's that looking for a window of opportunity, knowing there's something that you're meant to do, knowing that you need other people to see it in you. And when that happens, you just got to grab it and run with it.
So it's okay not to know. I mean, that's why I wrote here. It's okay not to have an idea of where you're going. It's okay not to know. But again, the question would be, for me, would be, where do you start to differentiate between you being forward-looking and you being goal-driven? You have a dream, you have a focus, you know where you're going. For instance, you hear people say, I'd always know I'll be this. I'd always known I'll be a doctor, and that's what I kept doing. But then in your situation, it felt like a very non-linear path where you went through from one phase to the other. And I'm thinking the random student will be there in the same position, thinking, maybe I don't know what I want to do, or fickle ambitions, like today want to be a doctor, and the next time you're thinking about, maybe I want to go into law,
So not everybody is absolutely focused on and driven on what they want to do, are they? Some people have a really clear vision from being very young. Some people, they develop in their school years. But there are some people like me who didn't know what they wanted to do. And I suppose the point of me telling my tale is because for a very long time I didn't know what I wanted to do. There was never that drive, that direction for me. But there was an internal one, and so if you find that you're lacking in a career as such, then just. For me, I just kept taking the next step up, kept learning and moving on and taking one step at a time, trying to climb up that ladder to get to where I needed to be internally almost. So I knew that there was something I needed to satisfy, not knowing what that was. So each job that I took got me a little bit closer to me feeling like, okay, I feel a bit more like I know what I'm doing now. I enjoy this part of my job, but I don't enjoy that. So how can I make that bit better? How can I get better at doing the bits that I do enjoy, and then apply for something that satisfies that? So by the time I got into my mid-20s, mid-20s, I'd say, I found myself living in London. I'd moved on from a job that had actually treated me badly. People had treated me badly, and I'd been bullied in the workplace. So I needed a fresh change, a new start, and I moved down to London and I was on a couch, a friend's couch for a couple of, sofa surfing for a couple of weeks. But, and I applied for jobs that I saw in the paper. There wasn't even the internet back then. And I found a job in a recruitment company. And I really, really loved that. I was actually doing the admin for the temp desk. It was fast-paced, it was fast-moving, I was working, every day was different, supporting people like me who had come to London trying to find temporary work. And I was in amongst a really good team and a great company that really looked after the people that worked there. So there was a taste of what it can be like, in a workplace where people appreciate you and they nurture you, and and they recognise that you're valuable to them. So every step of that way was just a next thing, a next step,
Yeah.
and I found myself with the title of a manager in my name, in my job title, and so I started to feel like, yeah, I'm getting somewhere here. Still, if you'd have asked me when I was a student, when I graduated, do you want to be a temp desk manager? Not particularly. No, it doesn't sound too exciting. But I found fulfillment in my job every day. So yeah, it's okay to be directionless to the outside world, or even in terms of what role do I want to be, what salary do I want to earn?
Yeah.
For me, the direction has always been an internal one. It's always been about bettering myself, constantly learning and moving on up.
And I was just thinking from what you just said, what do you think was the defining moment for you? And from what you just said, I think some defining moment could be some of the bully you experienced in your previous job. Do you think those situations could have been instrumental to you eventually being in a position to now, cater for the interest of people, be sure everyone is fine? Because I assume that's what you do in your capacity as the leader of City Council. So do you think some of your personal experiences with those jobs eventually come together to add up to what you do now? And again, what's the defining moment for you that just said, well, I think this is it now?
So, yeah, even negative experiences can be positive ones, can't they? Because of what you can take from them. And being bullied in the workplace was a horrible, horrible time for me. But it did push me to move out of a place of discomfort, and to actually put myself into a position where I was out of my depth and wondering what on earth was going to happen next. Moving down to London and sleeping on someone's couch was really scary move for someone who's faking confidence on the outside and doesn't always feel it on the inside. But I knew that I needed to make a big change. Even now, even last year, I've had a difficult time with something. My family has gone through something that's been challenging for us. But even when I was going through it, I knew that it was pushing us all out of our comfort zones in order for us to grow and to move on to something better. So I always take really positive things from negative situations as best I can. But yeah, every single step of the way. The defining moment, going back to your question, I think, so when I moved down to London, I joined a theatrical company to keep my hand in that acting side of things. You'd have thought that I might have gone for followed that dream of becoming an actor. But by that time, I think, needing to pay the bills took precedent. And but I really, really wanted to keep that theatrical, expressive side of myself going. And I joined a theatrical company in order to meet people as well. I was brand new down in London, and I auditioned for a musical. And I didn't expect for a second to get anything more than a small speaking part or a chorus part or something. But I auditioned, I went for it, again, pushing myself out of my comfort zone in a room full of strangers and professional actors and everything. And I got a lead role in that musical, and it blew my mind that someone who didn't know me had put so much faith into me, just from one small, 2 auditions. I auditioned and then they called me back for a second one. But just from that fleeting moment of meeting me, they knew I was the right person for them. And that was a turning point for me, because that's what I'd been looking for. It was somebody to recognise that spark in me, to recognise that I'd got something. And that was, for me, was a point in my life where I realised that actually maybe I can do this. Maybe I am. It is okay for me to be confident about myself, because I am good at what I do.
And did that take you straight to politics?
No, still not. No. There's a way to go yet. No. So I spent 5 years down in London. I had some great times there. Got together with my future husband, and we got married and had our first baby. And I found that living in London with a newborn was not a great idea, actually. Far away from my family, and on the outskirts of London, whereas I used to be right in the hub of it, and meeting friends all the time and going out and having fun. Being a brand new mum with a brand new baby, very, very, very different experience in London. So we moved up. That's when we moved up to Derby, 20 years ago now, almost to the day, actually. 20 years we moved, and I was a mum for a while. Not just a mum, I shouldn't say that. I was a mum, a stay-at-home mum, and I had 2 children. But it wasn't long before my second baby that I started to feel that I needed more. I wanted to be at home and I wanted to, be there for them, but I also needed to satisfy something in me that kept me working and kept my brain active. So I recognised in my new world of parenthood that there was something missing. There was information missing for me and for the other mums that I'd met. And there was nothing that you could just pick up and say, okay, this is what I can do with my little ones. This is where I could go. This is where I could take them. These are events that are going on. So I began my own business. And I created a magazine called Lots for Tots back in 2008. And it was a quarterly magazine that introduced to people what the options are for parents, where they could take their children, whether it's a toddler group or a signing group, a singing, dance or sports. It listed all of those kind of things, and then it also listed local community things that were going on, events around the city and so on. So it was my first taste of getting involved in a community, in reaching out to people and supporting them and bringing people together, and showing off the city as well, Mm-hmm. So it really helped me to learn about Derby, in every sense of the word, not just about what was going on in my city, but all of the neighbourhoods, because I did everything in this business. I sold the advertising, I edited the magazine, I designed the adverts, I put it all together, I sent it off to print, and then when it came back, I shoved all the copies in my car, and I drove around delivering them. So,
Wow.
So I was a one-woman band. Not only was I satisfying the creative side of me by doing that artwork and writing pieces for the magazine and editing it all together, but the business side of me and the logic, the side of me that enjoys a spreadsheet ran the business, and then the side of me that really wanted to get involved in my community. Was the one that went out and delivered to nurseries and to toddler groups and got to know people and got to know streets. Even now to this day, that served me really, really well, because I knock on doors all over the city, and if somebody says to me a street name, I know exactly where it is in this city, and I knew that before I came into politics. So the transition, I'm finally getting there. I ran that business for a while all on my own, and then I taught myself how to franchise it so that I could free up my time a bit more, and other people could run the magazine, and I could, I could be the overseer of that and benefit from that, but then also have free time for myself. And it was in those years, in the post Blair Brown years, we were in. My children were young. There was a Conservative and Liberal Democrat government. Austerity came in around about 2011-12. and that started to worry me. I started to pay attention. The previous 10 years I'd taken for granted, I think, that, that there was money, everybody had enough to get by, to live comfortably. You weren't seeing poverty around. I wasn't, anyway. In my experience, I wasn't seeing people struggling. But it all changed with the change of government. And so I started to sit up and pay attention. And running a business, of course, seeing how politics was affecting my business, and affecting parents and friends around me. I was paying more and more attention to it. So throughout those 2010s, that's when I started to transition unknowingly, yet again, but into politics, into a political mindset at the very least. So 2015 was the time when I joined the Labour Party, because we'd lost another election. We, Labour, had lost another election. And I felt quite despairing that, oh my goodness, have we got another 5 years at least of this austerity? And I just felt that there was going to be worse cuts to come. It was going to get worse. Little did any of us know then that Brexit was going to happen, that there would be 3 elections within next 5 years, and I just felt myself drawn more and more into it, and realising that I was complaining a lot on Facebook. That was our only social media medium at that time. And I was, I along with a lot of people, was complaining more and more about the state of affairs. And I just thought, people need to stand up and show that there is decency in politics. There are good people that just want to do the right thing. Because more and more, especially post-Brexit, there was this pulling of the right and this attacking the other. And I could sense, even, I hadn't studied politics, but I studied history. And, I recognised fascism, the signs of the early signs of fascism when I see it. And that's what scared me. It almost scared me into action, into saying to myself, do you know what? Maybe I need to be one of those people that stands up and does something.
That's a very good story. I mean, that's very interesting. But whilst you were talking, there's something that really caught my attention. I mean, you said one of the things that made you start your first business was because you were a mom, and you are still a mom anyway. But you had newborn then, and you were trying to free up some time. But I'm just thinking, with all of the things you spelled out, how you were the entire production team, from the scratch to the delivery.
Yeah.
And then I'm thinking, were you really free? Did you really have the spare time you wanted to have?
Well, that exactly. Again, it was a case of, so I 4 years I was a one-woman band, running the whole thing, the whole shebang myself. And I made a lot of mistakes in those days. I learned, I tested and tried different things, and I learned what worked and what didn't work. But yeah, I had 2 small children, and not a lot of spare time. Running a family, a household, a business kept me really, really busy for sure. Yeah. So the idea of franchising was really appealing because. Gaining some of that time back. By that time, 4 years into that business, I knew that I'd got the ingredients of that business down to a T. I knew exactly what worked and what didn't, and I knew that it could be replicated by others, and that it could help other parents, to not have to go back to work in a 9-to-5 office or whatever, giving parents an option to be able to work from home when it wasn't fashionable. Working from home has only become fashionable since COVID, right?
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, it sounds so obvious now, but it really wasn't, and it was quite looked down on, actually.
Feels like you don't have a job.
Yeah, nobody took me seriously. Yeah. Absolutely, and there was a term coined, mumpreneur. Oh my God, I hate that. I absolutely hated that, because it demeaned what I was doing, and it made others look on me as in, oh yeah, but it's just a bit of a hobby. She's just, she's a mum. She's not a real entrepreneur. Yeah. My goodness, and certainly in those early days when I networked, I went to some and I have to say they were Derby, networking spaces. They were predominantly male dominated. And when I started to explain what I did, people, men in particular, in you know, suited and booted kind of office roles would kind of quite quickly excuse themselves away from me, because my business had no interest to them. You know, they didn't see any benefit to it for them. So I started to network in female circles where actually everyone could see the benefit, and everyone was supportive of each other, regardless of whether it was useful to them or not. So, you know, it was very interesting dynamics back then. And that wasn't so long ago, really, when you think about it.
And I'm just thinking from your story and some of the things you've said, that's the place of frequent challenges coming up. And I'm just thinking the random students who say planning some business or having some career trajectory plans. What would you say? How would you say they should address those challenges? Or better still, what lesson do you think you learned the hard way? The major challenge that you think if you had addressed things a bit better, things could have gone in a more planned fashion?
I mean, I don't think I have any regrets in my business and with what I did, because I think a lot of the things that happened were out of my control. So probably the biggest thing is to make sure that you have contingency plans, because you know, when something like COVID comes along, will your business survive? You know, if your business is reliant on other people, how would it cope if something happened and you couldn't operate, for example? And you know, I was a micro business, really. I never had a budget beyond making sure that everything was paid for, all the bills were paid for. Sometimes there was a bit left for me, you know, or to put in my pension or something like that. But you know, I never had any overheads in terms of other people or an office space to pay for and things like that. So I grew within my means, I suppose. So my advice to anyone, any student thinking of setting up their own business is get all of the advice that you can get before you start. Get as many of your ducks in a row as you can. Take that advice from any space, anyone that will give it. You know, seek out people that will be supportive and offer you mentoring or anything like that. All right, test out your product or your idea, your formula, whatever it may be. Test it out on as many people as you can and try and hone it as much as possible. But at the same time, don't take so much time making it perfect before you actually just launch into it and just, you know what, because nothing replaces experience, nothing. And you will make mistakes, and always be kind enough to yourself to say to yourself, okay, that didn't work. I'm not going to beat myself up about that. I've made a loss on that. Let's put it to the side and, you know, let's learn from it. What would I do better next time?
I just think I like the balance you made there, because I've had two schools of thought about this particular discourse. Especially, you have some group of people who tell you have to have a solid preparation. You have to be sure you can face the markets. You have your strong structure, because if you have those structures, that's what will sustain the business in the long run. And you have people who tell you, you know what, just face it, just start. If you don't start, you will never start. And then, but I think you've been able to have a soft balance. There's a place of preparation, but there's a place of not taking so long in the preparation.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you'll be locked up in the loop of preparing, and you keep preparing until you eventually bored out of the business.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, I launched quite quickly once I'd got the business plan. You know, I did get advice, and I had some mentoring, but I probably got my first magazine out within about 3 months of starting the business. So yeah, I very much went for it.
And do you think that's a good time frame for? I mean, just trying to have it in a time frame. I think 3 months is a good one. I mean, I know it may not work for everyone, but randomly.
It depends on the business completely. I mean, I had nothing to lose. Personally, with the structure of this business, you know, working from home, as long as I could cover my initial overheads in that first magazine, I was good to go.
The next question I would really like to ask you, as the leader of the Derby City Council, what does leadership really look like behind the scene?
So it's a really varied role. It's fascinating, and I absolutely love it. No 2 days are the same, and that that keeps my brain active. It keeps it keeps me engaged, and it's a really challenging role. There's so much that people don't see. That people see me in the papers, on the radio, they might see me posting on social media or at events, but the day-to-day bread and butter of leading the council is meetings after meetings after meetings that people just don't see, and it's very, very time consuming. It really is, but I absolutely love it. It's so satisfying. That thing that I was chasing after, that something inside me that I needed to satisfy, this is it. This is it. The feeling of this is what I was supposed to do. And I'm not saying being the leader of the council is what I'm supposed to do for the rest of my life, because that's out of my control. That's down to the electorate. But I know that I feel so fulfilled doing this role. I pour my passion into it, and I care deeply, deeply about the people in this city and how the decisions we make affect them. So I take it, it weighs heavily on my shoulders. They say heavy is the head that wears the crown.
Yeah.
It really is a very a weighty responsibility to hold, and I never take it for granted, and I never carry out my role lightly. However, I've always known that I wanted people to see who I am. When I was looking at the council before I was a councillor, and even when I was a backbencher, to me it always felt quite stuffy, quite separate and distant from me and my life, and I didn't really ever see anybody reflected in my life who was on the council. Certainly before I became a councillor, it just felt something other. And I've really tried hard to be personable and bring my personality and my personal life a little bit into the role. And I hope that people catch a glimpse of a human being in this role, so that they can see that I'm just a normal person doing a job that it gets a lot of criticism and comes under a lot of fire. But I'm a person that's trying my best. I'm not an expert at running a council, but my God, I have learnt a heck of a lot about an awful lot of things over the past years. I can tell you about bus timetables or drainage systems or bin collections, but also economic growth and what's going on in North Nottinghamshire because of my deputy mayoral role, and it's so broad and vast a role that I'm just constantly learning, so it's a wonderful thing. I would love more people to be involved in local politics, to understand what it really is all about, because it's not just what people see on their street, which is bins and litter collection and potholes. It's the development of our city. It's looking to the future and making decisions that I won't even see further down the line. It's a wonderful, wonderful thing to be in a position to be in.
I just think your response is the same as the response you gave the last time.
Oh, really?
On this particular question. You said the same thing. No 2 days are the same. You just keep doing different things. And I remember the last time you mentioned the fact that you had to go present a paper in something entirely clueless about the last time we spoke, and then you were like, you had to prep, you had to.
Yes.
And you were trying to say this is the reality for you every day. Things just keep changing. You have to learn about climate change. You have to learn about sewage system. You have to do a lot of
Yes.
research and
Yeah, and that's where, and because we were I remember now, we were talking about the confidence thing.
Yeah.
Because, to come full circle, you can't not be confident in this role. You can't hold anxiety and second guess yourself. You have to be confident. And I genuinely have got to that place now. And it was almost like a switch for me when I stepped quite unexpectedly into the leadership role. It was just a case of, okay, well, we're doing this, and I've got to have it. I've got to be on it, and I can't know everything. I absolutely can't. I didn't do a degree in in I don't know, refuse in climate change, or in transport, in city centre design, planning, anything like that. But the best thing I can do to help myself is to be prepared as I can with every different situation I find myself in. So, I have a lot of officers that support me, and they will provide me with briefings. So I'm constantly updated and aware of what's going on. And to the best of my knowledge, I can convey that information because I'm the front face of the council. But please, don't ever ask me something really, really technical, because I will have to defer to an officer on things like that.
Yeah.
But it's the research and it's the knowing my stuff before I speak helps me with my confidence.
And I do that every time too, especially when I'm in a meeting and I'm expected to know everything about the students, and some random questions from some other member of staff from the university to me. And I'm like, okay, thank you very much for the question. I'll look into it and I'll take that up with the officer in charge. Just have some sort of prelude and then I'll transfer the case to the right person.
That's always a go-to phrase for a politician as well.
Because it feels like you expected to know everything. But again, in some sense, you expected to have an idea about everything. But
it's okay not to know.
Yeah. That's another good one. Yeah. It's also okay not to know. Yeah. Thank you. I just conscious of time, and I just have 1-2 questions more. What skills or attitudes do you think is very important for a student to carry on?
So again, I come back to that. It's okay not to know. I mean, I've just said it, about something else, but that applies to yourself, and to your ambitions and to your future. It's okay not to know, and so I think that. That going forwards and working on yourself, your inner self, working on what makes you happy, what satisfies you, what brings you joy, is something that I would recommend to everybody. And like I say, it's okay not to know.
Yeah. Just commenting on that, I remember it leads again to the question I was going to ask you about. Were you sure that politics was the way for you? And from what you said, I think it was when you got the joy you wanted, the happiness you wanted, was when you think, oh, this is where I'm supposed to be. Correct me if I'm wrong.
The word I would use that I was searching for, and I didn't know I was searching for it until I found it, was purpose. And that to me is what I'm ambitious for, is to fulfill my purpose. And whenever I either leave this role or I'm kicked out of it, whatever may happen, I will still be searching for purpose. So that gives me far more ambition than, getting to the top of a corporate ladder or anything like that for me. So the moment that I knew that politics was right for me was because I realised that there was something really important that needed to be done, not just by me, by many people like me. And I needed to be one of those people. And it was in that process of entering into politics, I gave myself a bit of a 5-year plan, that I was going to learn the ropes, I was going to meet people, understand how the Labour Party worked, work my way up, get myself known, prove my worth, stand to be a councillor, and really, push to myself to the point where I could be in a position where I could make a difference. And that's exactly what I did. I finally found myself with this purpose, with this plan, with this ambition, to to make a difference. And yeah, again, it wasn't, oh yeah, I want to be the Prime Minister, for example. Good grief, no, thank you. It was to make a difference. And so that, if that's your ambition, then you're always, you're on the right path, aren't you? So yeah, that's basically what I did. I worked my way up. Yes,
the path to finding
I
purpose.
entered. I properly entered politics, I would say, at the end of 2016. I stood in a by-election to be a candidate in early 2017, and I lost that by-election. I was mortified. I was absolutely distraught at losing that. I threw so much time and energy into it, and I really believed in myself, and I really thought I was going to get it just through pure willpower. But then I learned very quickly that politics doesn't work like that. I thought that people, if I could meet as many people as possible, they would love me, and and they would want me to be their councillor. But yeah, I learned very, very quickly from those early days that politics can be cruel. But not to take it personally. And I've built my way up and my experience from that time onwards.
Thank you very much, Nadine. Final question I think student really wants to know is what opportunities should students at Derby be paying attention to right now in the city centre or Derby at large?
Advanced manufacturing and nuclear are really, really on the up in the entire region. Green energy is something that a lot of money is being put into. And as the Deputy Mayor of the East Midlands, I'm very aware that the Mayor is focusing on putting the East Midlands on the map when it comes to green energy, advanced manufacturing and nuclear energy in particular. Working with Rolls-Royce is the huge opportunity in the city. But there are so many amazing small businesses, small to medium-sized enterprises in this city that are really, really passionate about Derby. So every opportunity, I would encourage you to go out and meet those businesses, meet those people, try and get some experience in those spaces. I would love to talk to anybody that's interested in coming into local politics. The key is don't come to Derby as a student and then leave it and take your skills somewhere else. Recognise that Derby is a city on the up. It's a city that still needs a lot of investment. It still needs a lot of TLC, but that's a great place to be in, actually, because you can see the changes. Look at this building we're in right now, the Cavendish building. It wasn't here 18 months ago. New things and new possibilities are coming through all the time for Derby. And the great thing that we've got here that I don't see necessarily in all other cities is that we've got what we call Team Derby. And that can be any person, any people stepping up at any time when the city needs them. It's been different groups or businesses or charities or organisations at different times. But when the city's had a challenge like COVID, like the football club when it nearly went under, like when Alstom was in danger of closing down, the train building company. Team Derby steps up and we represent, and it's that spirit that we need to see more of and feel more of. I'd love people that study here to be so proud of Derby and to want to be more involved in it and to want to be one of those people like me that wants to change it and wants to make a difference.
Thank you very much, Nadine. One final question before we wrap up.
I thought that was the final one.
No, this is more.
I keep saving my best bit for last.
This is more passing the torch. So you leave a question for the next guest. Just one question. What you want the next question? And I know I'm putting you on the spot right now. But
oh my goodness!
Just one random question that you like the next guest.
Well, it's got to relate to something that I've said, then, hasn't it? So I would ask the next question of the next person. What do you see your purpose as being?
What do you see your purpose as being?
Well, yeah, something along those lines. What do you feel your purpose is in life?
And I know, again, going back to what you said, it keeps changing. I mean, you keep finding it. It would be interesting to see what the person says.
You see, I think you can narrow it down and narrow it down and narrow it down until you get to something that's more internal. And we definitely didn't talk about this last time. You know, you could say, okay, my purpose is to, you know, work for a really big company and earn this amount of money and to whatever. Yeah, but what does it bring you? What does it give you internally? Oh, well, you know, it gives me satisfaction, or it gives me, you know, a bigger home. Or okay, let's narrow that down. How does that make you feel? And when you really, really, really like fine tune it and dilute it down to the purpose. You know, what is it that you want? What one word are you searching for? And I think it's different things for different people. For my best friend, she says that her word is peace, but for me, my one word is joy.
So if you want students to take anything out of this episode, do you think that's what you want them to take out of it? Joy.
Yeah, I think when you dilute everything down, you know, my purpose in life is to make a difference, but what does that give me as a person, as a human being, as a soul? Well, it gives me joy, you know, and that's what I seek in everything that I do, whether it's, you know, my family, whether it's a holiday, my friends, you know, different experiences, my role, my job, the things that it teaches me and the places it takes me, it brings me joy.
Thank you very much, Nadine. It's been great having this conversation with you. Thank you for honoring this podcast, even for the second time. It really means a lot to me.
Fingers crossed.
Thank you. Yeah, it should be the second and last time. Thank you very much, Nadine.
It's my pleasure.
I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you very much for being there so far. I've been having a conversation with Nadine so far, and it's been a great one. So see you on the next one. Thank you.